Welcome to That Business Show 2.0, where business becomes show business. New episodes air each weekday morning, 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time at thatbusinessnetwork.com. You can find us available on demand on iTunes and on YouTube. Today we're going to be talking with Paula Conway. She's the president of Astonish Media Group. Learn more about this at astonishmediagroup.com, a media company based in New York area. So Paula, welcome to the program today.
Jamie, thank you so much for having me.
So first off, tell us about Astonish Media Group.
Astonish Media Group is nearly 20 years old. We are a strategic media company based in Manhattan, and we provide services for our clients, including public relations, branding, business strategy, client management, and influencer media.
Okay, so you're in Manhattan. You're in the capital of all media, and you're a media company. I mean, you got to be competing with the best of the best out there. Am I right?
Oh, every day. Of course. Yeah, absolutely. But that's the game.
So how do you then begin to differentiate yourself in such a crowded space in Manhattan? I mean, I practice real estate down here in Tampa Bay. I could imagine practicing real estate in New York City.
No, that makes a lot of sense. I think that there are two things that really differentiate us are the results that we provide on the media side and the business strategy that we give our clients while we're doing their media. So the interesting thing about that is that a lot of companies come in to us for public relations, and what they don't realize is that their brand needs a lot of help. And there are very few firms that really can do both and understand what that means. So there's a dance and a courtship that we go through to prepare them for media, because ultimately your brand really has to be very tight if you really want to get amazing media reception. So as opposed to just coming in and saying, well, let's just throw some things against the wall and see what sticks, we become a business partner. And we work on your whole business strategy with you and help you also shape your brand in order to get the kind of media results that you want.
Now, what type of clientele are you reaching out to? Is it a New York-centric base of consumers, or do you broaden out to any business owners and professionals outside of New York City?
Yeah, so we're actually international. We have an office in London because we have clients that are based there. And because we have an office in Miami, an office in LA, and because of the nature of the types of clients that we have, which are very broad and quite eclectic, because we're a generalist firm, we have, we cover a wide variety of consumer base, but we have health tech, we have lifestyle, we have food accounts, we have some clients that we just help manage, their careers, meaning bring them to book deals. We create a lot of content. New York Daily News is one of our largest clients. So we also have the capacity to write an entire 60,000 word book for a client and ghostwrite it.
Now, being based, is your business based on being in New York City? I mean, but could you pick up and go somewhere else, or are you operating very, very staunchly inside of New York City?
Well, that's a really good question. We do work remotely a lot. But yes, our base, we have an office at 245 Park Avenue, and we've chosen to stay in the New York area because really this is the media capital of the world. And I encourage, any business to, if you're going to hire a firm, like ours, or you're going to be around the media, you're going to need somebody that's based in New York.
Now, your background, tell us how you found the Astonish Media Group, your own media background and marketing background.
So I actually was a Broadway press agent and a writer, and I had those two lanes pretty solid as I was moving up in my career. And at a certain point, I wanted to branch out. I didn't want to just work on Broadway shows, and I was writing about travel, interestingly enough. And I then went in-house to a firm where I was their youngest vice president, and I got that sort of generalist education. I was still writing, and then it became very clear to me that I didn't want to work for someone else. And I think those of us who go out on their own, we know why. You feel it inside of you that you just have to branch out on your own. So I just really put a stake in the ground and said, I'm leaving. I want the freedom to write as much as I want to. I want to represent clients my way, not somebody else's way. And I just did it. I just did it.
So let's talk about, this audience is, small business owner, entry-level entrepreneur. Media and public relations is probably the last thing on the mind of a person who's just starting a business. But talk to us about why it should be on the forefront of starting a business. Should we be out there, releasing, doing press releases and talking to the media even when we're entry-level?
Well, I think that the answer to the question, it is yes, but. So the but is your brand ready for media? Do you have a brand? Do you know what it is? You don't want to just start putting things out there with the press. One, you don't want to ruin long-term relationships. And secondly, you want them to see your company in its very best light and you yourself. So just at face value, I'd have to say it really depends on the company and how tightly evolved they are with their messaging and with their brand.
I see some companies in Tampa Bay. It's like every time they hire somebody, they put out a press release. It's like just all these non-events to me. I mean, but to them, I guess it's a big event. They're inside their company. But I mean, is that just overkill when you're just releasing press releases for the sake of releasing them?
Yeah. And I hate to say this about the industry that I'm so staunchly in, but there mostly aren't good publicists. There just aren't. Finding a good firm that really understands the business side of the media strategy, which is really what that is when you're good, is a very hard thing to do. And yes, PR firms and publicists, exhaust the press releases, and there's so much noise out there. It's one of the worst things that you can do. You need to have meaningful news to share.
So when somebody has a brand and they come to you and you put together a plan for them, how do you attack this business? And are you out there putting them on in front of in television shows and podcasts and radio shows, or is it specific to the industry that they're in?
Yes, sometimes it is. I would say in almost all cases, though, the CEO, founder, president of the company, whoever's at the top of the leadership chain, always needs to be seen as a thought leader. Thought leadership is key and critical in our editorial economy, the way that it is today. So content, and everybody who's good will say this, is king. So creating content on your website, having a blog, and putting out content under your own name in your area of expertise is an excellent way to start with or without a firm. So for example, if you're in the real estate business, you might create an article on, 5 top tips for financing a home after a divorce. Why? Because it's very specific to divorce. It's an interesting message. It's a different message. Somebody else is just going to put out 5 top tips for buying a new home. But if you go after a set market, and there's a lot of them out there, you'll get more attention, and you'll also show that you really know what you're doing.
Now, when your clients come to you, do they have this mindset of being a thought leader or an influencer, or are they just looking for ways to just bring more awareness to their brand?
Yeah, that's a great question, Jamie. Most of them are just looking for ways to bring more awareness and to make the phones ring and to make the cash register sing. And it's unfortunate because it's not the thing that you should be looking for. What you should be looking for is leadership position, which is a very hard thing to get. And no, they don't come in usually saying, I want thought leadership. Some of the tech firms, small tech firms recently funded, up to $2 million, they will have an understanding of what thought leadership is. But even their version of thought leadership is often a little skewed, and they need our help to translate content to journalism.
So from a business standpoint, how is it that you show results to your clients? Because PR, public relations, it's important, but it's hard to derive direct return from that specific investment. How do you manage that?
That's an excellent question, and it's my favorite question. It's something we talk about with our clients and internally every single day. So it is different for every client. So if you have a food client and they're selling, so we have a client that sells cakes on the internet, for example. They need to see that the cakes are moving because of what we're doing. Every client's a little bit different, though. That some will come in and say, this is how I evaluate ROI. Let's take that client and sort of juxtapose them to another client that we have that's in the home goods, fashion, accessories area. They don't always necessarily see an ROI. It's a very tricky space to be in that is just about money and moving product. But what they do see is an influencer market that's growing, and they have credibility that they've never had before. So there's oftentimes other reasons why companies will seek public relations, and there's nothing that gives you more credibility than media.
Currently talking with Paula Conway, president of the Astonish Media Group, based in New York City. Learn more at astonishmediagroup.com. When we come back from the break, I want to ask her about, is all publicity good publicity? That's a question I love to ask of all publicists. So you're listening to That Business Show 2.0, where business becomes show business. And we're back to That Business Show 2.0 with Jamie Maloney, where business becomes a show business. My guest, Paula Conway, president of the Astonish Media Group. Learn more at astonishmediagroup.com. So, Paula, I always love to ask the question of publicists. You hear people out there, all publicity is good publicity, even if it's, negative, around your brand. What's your thoughts on that?
So my thoughts on that, if you're, for example, a doctor, and we've had many, and you're in litigations and the publicity is about the litigations against your practice, that is not good publicity. So no, not all publicity is good publicity. Further to that, if it's not providing a value to you, if it's not in the right publication, if your peers aren't reading it, if it's not driving sales, if it's not really putting your brand in its best light, then no, it's not good publicity. So good publicity is done in a very strategic way where you're able to say, this is what's most effective for us, a business audience, a consumer audience, and making sure that you direct your media appropriately.
Now, when clients come to you, do they come to you during bad PR times necessarily? Is that how you meet some of your clients? They said, oh my gosh, we've done this, we need damage control. Is that something that you also offer for clients?
We are not a damage control agency. That's not what we do. We have had clients that have happened upon needing damage control in the course of working with us. So certainly we know how to handle it, but we don't necessarily have clients that come to us for a damage control situation, which is fine.
So the building of a brand is always the biggest challenge of a successful long-term business, because you want to also, the entrepreneurs who start businesses, and this is something I talk about in this program a lot, you want to be able to step outside of your brand to where it's functioning independently of you. So when you begin to work with a business owners, let's talk about brand development. Where do you start, or how do you approach this?
It's a very good question, because this is the answer to this is almost always wrong. It's not a logo, it is not your corporate identity, and it's not even your product. So the truth about branding is that it is a person's gut feeling about the product, service, or organization that you have. That's what branding really is. Now, all of these other things, the logo, the Pantones that you choose, the messaging on your website, these are ingredients. So a brand develops over time, right? Because people then respond to what you've done or they don't. And it is really the consumer and the end customer that defines what your brand is.
And how long does it take to develop a brand in a major market? And at what point do you kind of throw in the towel and you say, we got to rebrand, we got to start over?
That's a good question too. If it's not resonating with people, if you're not making sales, if nobody's coming to your website, you have to throw in the towel and start over. And that happens. In terms of time, it can take years to build a brand. I wish that I could tell you can do it in 6 months. You can get customers in that amount of time, but to grow a brand, like say Tom's, which is an example of excellent branding, that can take years.
It takes years to build, but only days to destroy, or minutes to destroy. That's just the irony of business, unfortunately, and of our society, or it holds hand in hand with our own reputations as well. And so when you're developing a brand, then when you're working with somebody, tell me how you work with them on building it. I mean, do you have like a program that you put everybody through?
Yeah. So the first thing that we do is we try to get them to explain to us what their brand is. And that's usually something they stumble through. One sentence. You need to be able to say it in one sentence. So to help them get there, what is your value? What is at stake if nobody uses your product? Nobody comes to your company. Now, that is a very hard question to answer because that sounds like cardiac arrest, but it's intentional. What is at stake? What is your value? How are you different from your competitors? These are top, very simple things you need to be able to answer. And I don't mean that you just have to be different. You have to be very, 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 very different from everybody else who is doing what you're doing. And you need to figure out what that is. And if you can't say it, then obviously you haven't figured that out.
And you said most people can't answer that question coherently in one sentence or less when they come to you. And I find that, a problem, with myself and some of the things that I do. And I ask that of others too. And it's, people don't put a lot of thought into the dynamics of the business. They just go and do.
They do. Having laser focus is one of the most important things to running a successful business. And it's a skill that you have to develop. So the good news is for you is that you can work on that. You're not just born with laser focus. Some people are, but you can work on that skill. And what I always tell people too is pare down, not up. Don't try to do everything, and get help. If we, particularly women, will try to take on everything, but most people in business do. Like, I can handle it. I can define my brand. I can create my messaging. No, you can't. You need somebody who's really good at it to help you get there and to help you focus.
Now, you're doing this service for other clients, but yet you have to do it for your own business. Do you ever find yourself stepping on your own ideas or not following your own practices?
Yes. And what I do is I hire out myself. So whether it's creating content that that gets picked up by the media, booking myself for media, creating messaging on things that we're launching or that we're doing, I always go to somebody else and have them look at it and poke holes in it to make it better.
So it's sort of like the attorney who represents themselves. I mean, that's not an advisable thing to do. So you don't try to do your own service for yourself. You let somebody else handle it for you. That's a great tip and a great piece of advice, I think, right there. Now, coming out of your prior, you were working with Broadway. You said it was.
Yes, I was a Broadway press agent.
And then you would go into starting Astonish Media Group. Starting any business is a challenge, and credibility and reputation, it's difficult to get those things off the ground. So how did you make that first sale, or how did you get those first clients in the door?
Well, the interesting thing is the company's evolved over time. So when I started my business for the very first time, I was doing theater. I wasn't doing all of these other types of clients that I was doing now. And I met a theater owner through the work that I had done on Broadway, who owned the John Houseman Theater, Eric Krebs. I'm always very grateful to him. And I noticed when he was giving me a tour that he had a lot of office space. And he had quite a few high-profile shows like Broadway Kids, and he didn't have anybody really repping them. So I said, how about this? You give me the business space on 42nd Street, and I will rep Broadway Kids. It was a barter. I didn't know what I was doing, Jamie. I just made it up. I just made it up. And then from there, I realized I was supposed to work for myself, and I didn't only want to do theater. So that's when I expanded, and the company evolved and changed over time. And I wrote a best-selling book with HarperCollins in 2006 that was ironically a beauty book. Mm-hmm. But that was sort of it did so well. It was a bestseller. It was on major morning shows that I realized, well, this is perfect for your company because you create content. You're a content creator. So that is why I say we're a strategic media firm, because we're not just a PR firm, and our clients need content. And we write the thought leadership articles for Forbes. We write it for Inc. because we don't need you to be able to do it. That's what we do.
Now, do you think it's you're competing in the metropolis of all markets there in New York City? Are the way you behave in business in New York City, is it any different than somebody who would behave in a small town, or do you have to? I mean, you hear so much about being cutthroat in business, but do the same principles apply in New York City as they do in Wisconsin?
I think the answer is no and yes. If you have a good product and you're savvy and smart at what you do, people are always going to take notice. Doesn't matter where you're pitching it if you have a good product. New York is a very competitive field. So when you talk about day-to-day strategies, yes, it's much harder. You might find out, I might get a tip at a dinner party about a segment that's taking place on Good Morning America, and I know that my client is right for it. And I hear that somebody else is already in the running to be in that segment. I have to run interference, and there's a very sort of slick way to do that.
Now, you talk a lot about content creation. You talked about being a creator yourselves. What type of schedule do you put yourself on for putting out your own content?
Well, I try to write a story every week. I write an article every week, and I have somebody who represents me, and I give it to that person. It also settles a lot of objectivity in pitching, and that person is responsible for distributing it far and wide.
So what is your views on media today? There's so much negativity in press, and we've kind of morphed into a device of, a society here. And I often say, news media is at the forefront of a lot of this evolution. But, you're doing public relations and stuff. So what is your thought on that?
We have never been at a more powerful time for people to get a lot of attention. While there is a lot of noise out there, Jamie, social media has changed the landscape. Take Instagram, for example. You can direct message any celebrity, any senator, congressman, high profile person, actor, dancer, whatever. And it's the wild, wild west. Like, they haven't put restrictions on that yet. So, and that includes journalists. You can find them on LinkedIn. You can find them on Twitter. So the good news is really for small businesses, if you can't afford a firm like ours, you can get to a certain point on your own because it's so wide open. The trick is understanding what to put out, what to ask for, and that's where people kind of stumble.
Well, that's where you come into play and help them out there with Astonish Media Group, correct?
Yes, we do.
We got about a minute left. Would you like to leave our audience with any closing thoughts or anything?
I would say the most important thing in your business is to be transparent and authentic. People are very attracted to it, particularly today. They don't want to know just what you make. They want to know why you make it. And then they want you to show them the why. Video, live Facebook chats, streaming on YouTube. I would say that's one of the most powerful ways to garner an audience and real fans.
Well, good discussion. Paula Conway, president of the Astonish Media Group. Thank you so much for being with me on the program today.
Thank you for having me. It was wonderful.
And learn more at astonishmediagroup.com. New episodes of our program air weekday mornings, 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on thatbusinessnetwork.com and made available on demand on iTunes and on YouTube. If you'd like to come onto the program, visit tbsinterview.com for more information. And again, tune in weekday mornings, 9 a.m., thatbusinessnetwork.com. Talk to you soon.